Hello guys, Newton here again. Welcome to my YouTube channel. It's been a long time coming, but I digress. I'm here to tell you a story of the Yoruba origins, and it's going to involve some deities. It's going to involve belief systems. It's going to involve ancient knowledge and practices. I'm going to tell you how the world that you and I live in, was created according to the Yoruba mythology. Now, I am not trying to let down anybody's faiths. We all have our individual faiths. We all have our individual belief systems. But I'm doing this to educate you, to make you understand that as Nigerians, we have a wide variety of cultures and belief systems. And each of these cultures and belief systems that I'll be highlighting subsequently in my videos will include the way our ancestors viewed the world, the way they saw it. We're going to go on a journey and understand the inner workings and the mindsets of our ancestors before civilization as you know it. So hop on this ride and let's see how the Yorubas believe the world came to existence. Before I go into it proper, I like to make it clear I am not of the Yoruba origins. I'm not of the Yoruba tribe. So my pronunciations may not be spot on the way I pronounce these native names, the way I highlight their pronunciations. I may not be as articulate as a native Yoruba speaker, but I'm going to try my best, and I hope you guys flow with me. Before I go on, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe. The link to my sponsors will be in the notification panel, so please like, subscribe, and share. All right, the origins according to the Yoruba. There are various schools of thoughts that breaks down how the world we exist in today came to be. There are various knowledge passed down, oral tradition passed down from the first, the first priests or the first harbingers of knowledge, known as the Ifa priests. These Ifa priests have been tasked with passing knowledge from, of course, the gods or the deities down to mankind and teaching them the ways of their culture. Okay, so in the beginning, there were a gathering of divine or spiritual deities known as the Orisha. The Orisha are more or less like a collection of divinities in Yoruba religion or in Yoruba mythology that is believed to rule the affairs of the whole world and also rule the affairs of men. So the Orisha is made up of different deities, 7 different functions. But for the purpose of this video, I'll be highlighting Obatala. Obatala is the father of creation, according to Yoruba mythology. Of course, I'm not saying he's the overall head of or the overall divine head of the universe, but it is believed that Obatala, being a member of the Orisha, sat down and thought to himself, we are divinities. We've been existing since the creation of time, and I'm bored. I want to explore. I want to expand my reach. How do I do that? Where do I go? I seek wisdom. How do I go about my my reach, or how do I go about my mission? And Obatala confronted Olorun. Olorun is the overall head of the Orisha, and Olorun is seen as the supreme being in Yoruba mythology. Obatala confronted Olorun and told Olorun, I want to inhabit that planet over there. How do I go about it? I lack the wisdom, or I lack the understanding. What do I do? Olorun, moved, or Olorun directed Obatala to his son, Orunmila. Orunmila is seen as the god of prophecy in Yoruba mythology or Yoruba religion. And Obatala, knowing fully well that for his mission to be successful, he had to consult Orunmila, met with Orunmila also and told Orunmila of his quest. Orunmila, being the god of prophecy, had already foreseen that Obatala will be successful in his quest and will be successful in his mission, but with the help of some specific items, some items needed to make his the inhabitation of the planet Earth possible. Orunmila instructed Obatala to go with these specific items. He said, Obatala, or Obatala, I don't know, I'm sorry, you're going to need a cock, a big cock. You're going to need a snail shell. In that snail shell, you're going to need sand fitted into the snail shell. And you're also going to need a long chain and some palm tree seeds or some palm nuts. These five, and the addition of a black cat. I'm going to make the list again. You're going to need a long chain. You're going to need a big cock. You're going to need a snail shell filled with sand, a black cat, and a palm nut. The kind of nuts that grows palm trees. And with this equipment listed, Obatala was grateful. So the other Orisha came together to help Obatala gather these items. They gathered their golds and their jewelries and smelted them together to make this long chain. And he tied it around his arm or around his neck, I don't know, and set out on his journey and walked a long distance, obviously, and got to the edge of the heavens. Now, he peeks from the edge of the heavens and looked downwards, and he could see the spherical earth, the globe, so to speak. The earth was completely dark, was covered in darkness, was empty, was without life, and water was on the surface of the earth. So what he did was, remember, part of the items he traveled with was a long chain. So he attached the long chain to the edge of the ledge and began climbing down to earth. On his way down, he realized that the chain was too short to get to the earth, and he was caught in between the ledge of the heavens and the earth. Confused, he cried unto Orunmila, the god of prophecy, and asked for help. And Orunmila asked him to search his bag and bring out the snail shell containing the sand that he had packed earlier before his journey. So he brought it out and poured the sand down to the earth. Now this sand came down to the earth, poured down to the earth, and formed a very mighty hill, a very large mountainous hill called, in present times, called the Ife Hill or the Ife Mountain. It is believed that, and according to Yoruba mythology, it is believed that this hill or this mountain is the center of the universe. This is where life originated from, and this is both the physical center and the spiritual center of the universe. So What he obeyed Oromila's instructions, poured the sand and it formed the hill, and then he climbed onto that hill. Standing there, he named that hill Ife. So he brought from his bag also a black cock he had also packed and placed the cock on the hill. The moment he did that, the cock immediately began scratching and pecking at the hill, scattering the sand all over the world. It sounds outlandish, but the Yorubas believe it to be true. Scattering the sand all over the world. If you are familiar with how cocks and fowls in general, operate, they keep scratching and scattering the sand around them. So he scattered the sand around. The cock scattered the sand around the world. The higher heaps formed other smaller mountains and hills, and the lower heaps formed valleys. So that is how dry land came to be. So the next thing Obatala did was plant the palm nuts, and these palm nuts grew to be palm trees. They grew to be palm trees, and he was pleased with what he had done. He was okay. The black cat, which was the last item he packed, was just there to keep him company. So many years passed, and Obatala grew bored. He wasn't happy that he was the only inhabitant of this beautiful land he has come to occupy, and decided that he needed company. Now, before he came to that decision, it is important to note that Obatala was a heavy drinker of palm wine. Obatala drank palm wine so much, and more times than not, it made him drunk. So he decided that, why don't I mold figures that look like me using the sand of this earth and see if they can keep me company. He set out to do just that, molding these figures. But while molding, he was drinking. So he was molding while he was drunk. It is important to note this, that Obatala was molding while he was drunk. And sensing that he was pleased in that his intoxicated state, sensing that he was pleased with what he had done, he decided to cry out to Olorun to breathe life into these, things he has molded using the earth. And Olorun did just that. But when Obatala came to the realization of what he had done, he realized that in his drunken state, he had molded disfigured beings. He has made beings missing limbs, or having shorter limbs, or having one eye, or having just one ear, or having no mouth at all. These were the first beings Obatala created, and he was deeply remorseful, he was deeply regretful, and wasn't pleased with what he had done. So he took a vow never to drink again, simply because he had created such creatures which were not his initial intentions. So till today, it's also important to note that Obatala remains the patron god in Yoruba for the disabled. So if you see a disabled man on the streets, you should know that Obatala is the patron god of that man. He takes care of the disabled or the differently abled. So he swore off palm wine. He promised himself never to drink, palm wine again to get to that point, and decided to go back to his task of molding complete beings or other complete, figures. And he was successful and asked Oromila to also breathe life into them, and that's how the first set of men came into existence. These men obviously worshipped Obatala and the rest of the Orisha, and that was how mankind began to spread from Ife. You remember earlier I said Ife is believed to be the center of the universe. It is believed to be the origin of life itself. So man started building huts and fending for themselves and enjoying, the land Obatala had created. So Obatala obviously decided to leave the land he had created to mankind to take care and to nurture this land he had created, to nurture this world he had just formed. And he decided to return to the Orisha in heaven. So mankind was prospering under, you know, the watchful eye of the Orisha, and they were happy making sacrifices and offerings. But there was a member of the Orisha that Obatala did not consult before he set out on his journey, before creating this paradise that he was pleased with. And that Orisha is the goddess known as Olokun. Olokun happens to be the Orisha of the seas. If you remember, when Obatala looked at the earth before he formed land, it was completely covered in water. Now, the Orisha of that body of water, of the seas, that was inhabiting the earth first, is known as Olokun. And Olokun was not pleased that before what seemed to be like an invasion of her domain, before Obatala came down to her domain, he didn't consult her first. He didn't ask for her permission. She was displeased that she was sidelined from his initial plans and decided to send heavy floods, very heavy floods, to wipe away Obatala's creation out of spite. Now, mankind was suffering for Obatala's negligence or mistake. The body of water rose to a point where they all had to retreat to the highest mountain, which is the Ife mountain, and began to cry out to heaven that the Orisha should come to their aid. While crying out, they met a god that was on earth to observe Obatala's creation, to admire it, so to speak, and decided that they beg this deity to take their message back to heaven to tell the other Orisha that they are dying. Flood is, the body of water has risen, and they don't know how to survive they don't know how to survive the anger of Olokun. Shaun demanded a sacrifice, which they gave to him, and decided to take their message back to heaven to tell the Orisha. On hearing this, Orunmila came down to earth and cast a spell, and the body of water died down. It's a very interesting story. So that was how mankind survived the flooding of Olokun. Olokun was appeased also, and that was how the earth was formed according to Yoruba mythology. I don't know. I hope you really liked this story. If you watched it to the end, I'm grateful you did. It's quite peculiar, and subsequently, I'll be going into other Orisha, other popular Orisha, and other popular men that were so mighty on earth that they got to the level of being deities or of being gods. So, thank you for staying tuned. So that brings us to the end of the creation story. According to just one school of thought, mind you, there are many out there, but this was the one I found the most interesting. So that brings us to the end of the creation story according to Yoruba mythology. So if you have comments, if you have contributions, my comment box is open. Feel free. If you're Yoruba and you would like to give me more insights, on your culture, on your heritage, on your mythology, on your belief system, my comment section is open. Like I said, I did this solely on independent research, so it may not be 100% accurate. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for liking, thank you for sharing, thank you for subscribing. Please share my videos. I need you to please share. Today's video is sponsored by Wavy O'Clock. Wavy O'Clock is an urban streetwear plug. that deals with everything urban wears, from jiggy shirts to cargo pants to hoodies. They print on every surface imaginable. So patronize with your clock clothings. Thank you so much for sticking with me till the end. Until next time on our African and Nigerian mythology series. See you next time. Newton Prime out.